You drove all this way to ask a centenarian the secret, huh? I see you set up your fancy cameras. You got the lights. You're expecting some magic words. I'm 101 years old, born in 1923. I've been around the sun more times than I care to count. And every time someone sits in that chair where you're sitting, they ask the same thing. George, what's the secret? Is it the diet? Is it the exercise? Is it clean living? They look at me like I'm some kind of science experiment. They want me to say that if they eat blueberries every morning and do yoga, they'll live forever. Well, let me save you some time. It's not the blueberries, and it sure as hell isn't clean living. I smoked Lucky Strikes for 40 years. I drank whiskey when I was happy and whiskey when I was sad. I worked in a steel mill breathing in soot before OSHA was even a thought in the government's mind. I eat bacon. I like my steak rare. So if you're looking for health advice, go find yourself a doctor. But if you're asking me how I'm still here, and I mean really here, not just breathing, but actually living, then pull that chair a little closer. Because the secret has nothing to do with preserving the body. It's about not letting the world rot your soul. See, people today, you're all obsessed with longevity. You want to add years to your life. I get it. But I'm telling you, adding years is the straightforward part. Modern medicine keeps you breathing. The hard part, the part nobody ever teaches you, is adding life to your years. Here's the truth. The secret is that you have to fight for your joy every single day. It's a fist fight. You wake up and the world wants to drag you down. The news, the bills, the aches in your knees, the regrets rattling around in your head, they all want to pull you back into the mattress. The secret is, you don't sit around waiting for a good day. You make one. You grab the day by the collar and you say, I'm going to find something worth smiling about in you if it kills me. Most people don't do that. They wait. They wait for the weekend. They wait for the promotion. They wait for the kids to grow up. They wait for retirement. They wait for the pain to stop. And let me tell you, friend, the waiting room is where you lose your life. I didn't wait. You look at me and you see a pleasant old man in a flannel shirt. You probably think I'm cute. That's all right, but you don't know what I'm made of. I was 6 years old when the stock market crashed in '29. You think things are tough now? Let me tell you about the Great Depression. I watched my father, a proud man, a man who built houses with his hands, stand in a bread line for 6 hours just to bring home a loaf that was hard as a brick. I watched him shrink. Shame is a terrible thing for a man. It eats him from the inside out. I didn't have a childhood. I had a job. By 10, I was scavenging scrap metal. By 12, I was doing odd jobs that would have broken a grown man. Back then, we didn't have shoes that fit right. We stuffed newspaper into the soles to cover the holes. Then came the war, the big one, 1941. I was 18. I had never been more than 10 miles from my front porch, and suddenly I'm on a boat headed to the Pacific. I'm not going to talk about the noise or the smell or the boys who never came home. But I will tell you this. When I got back in '45, I felt ancient. I was 22 years old, but I felt 80. I had seen what human beings could do to one another. I had seen the world on fire. I came back to Ohio and got a job at the steel plant. Hard work, honest work. The heat from those blast furnaces could melt the buttons right off your shirt. But I was alive, and I wanted the American dream. I wanted the white picket fence. I wanted the peace. And I got it. Her name was Elizabeth, Beth. She was the librarian at the high school. She had these glasses she was always pushing back up her nose. And when she laughed, she snorted just a little. God, I loved that sound. We got married in '48. We bought a small house on Elm Street. We had 3 kids, Tommy, Sarah, and little Mikey. Those years, 1948 to 1957, those were the golden years. I thought I had finally made it. I survived the Depression. I survived the war. I figured life owed me a happy ending. That's the first mistake. Life doesn't owe you a single thing. November 14th, 1957, a Tuesday. Just an ordinary Tuesday. It was raining. Not a storm. Just that cold gray November drizzle. Beth went out to pick up groceries and get a prescription for Mikey's cough. A drunk driver in a pickup truck ran a stop sign. They told me she didn't feel any pain. They always say that. I'm not sure if it's true, or if they just say it to keep you from going out of your mind. I was 34 years old, a widower with 3 children under the age of 9. The silence in the house, that was the worst part. You don't understand how much sound a person makes until they're no longer there. The sound of her humming in the kitchen, the sound of her turning pages, all of it gone. I fell into a hole, a deep, dark hole. I went to work. I came home. I drank. I drank to sleep. I drank to forget the look on the policeman's face when he showed up at my door. I was furious, furious at God. I screamed at the ceiling until my throat gave out. Why me? I fought your war. I worked hard. Why her? I was turning to stone, cold. My kids were scared of me. I was a ghost living in my own house. This brings me to the first real lesson. Write this down. Pain is inevitable, but misery is a choice. It took me 6 months to figure that out. 6 months of pure hell. One evening I was sitting in the dark, working through a bottle of bourbon. My youngest, Mikey, was about 6 at the time. He came in wearing his pajamas, holding the little stuffed bear that Beth had bought him. He stood there for a long moment. Then he whispered, "Daddy, are you going to leave us too?" It hit me like a punch to the chest. I looked at this little boy who had already lost his mother and was now watching his father quietly disappear in a chair. He thought it was somehow his fault. That was the moment, the turning point. I put the bottle down. I poured what was left down the sink. I picked Mikey up and held him, and I cried for the first time in months. Real tears, not the angry kind, the healing kind. I understood something that night. I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. Elizabeth didn't marry a man who quit, and she sure as hell didn't want her children raised by a bitter, angry drunk. If I truly loved her, I had to honor her by living. I made a deal with myself. I said, "George, you can be sad, you can grieve, but you cannot go cold. You have to bring the warmth back into this house." So I started choosing. It wasn't easy. Getting up the next morning was the hardest thing I had ever done. But I got up. I made pancakes. I burned them, but I made them. I put a record on. I forced a smile for my kids. And after a while, the smile stopped needing to be forced. I learned that you cannot control the tragedy. You cannot bring the dead back. But you have complete control over what the tragedy makes of you. You can let it turn you into a victim, or you can let it turn you into a survivor. I chose to survive. Time moves on. It always does. The kids grew up and moved away. I kept working at the mill. I was a foreman by then. Good money. I defined myself by that job. I was George the Steel Man. Then came the early 80s. The Rust Belt started rusting. I was 60 years old when they shut the plant down. Layoffs, pension cuts, the whole thing. Forced into early retirement. For a man of my generation, your worth was your work. Without my badge, without my lunch pail, who was I? I sat on this porch for weeks feeling like scrap metal. But then I remembered the lesson from 1957. I am not what happens to me. I am not my job. I am not my bank account. I took up woodworking. I started growing tomatoes. I read the history books I had never had time for. I realized that for 40 years I had been busy making a living, but I hadn't been making a life. Losing that job was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to slow down. It forced me to look at the trees instead of the furnace. Now let's talk about the second big lesson. To hell with what the neighbors think. I was 74 years old. I had been a widower for 40 years. I was comfortable. I was the nice old man on the block. Then I met Rose. Rose was a firecracker. She was 68. She drove a bright red convertible. She painted abstract art that looked like spilled paint to me, but she called it expressionism. She wore big purple hats, and she had been divorced twice, which in this town in the 90s was practically a scandal. A respectable widower seeing a woman like Rose. Tongues were wagging all over the neighborhood. My own daughter Sarah came to me and said, "Dad, what are you doing? People are talking. She's not like Mom." I looked at my daughter and said, "I know she's not like Mom. Nobody is like Mom. But I'm not looking for a replacement. I'm looking for a partner." I told her, Sarah, I spent 40 years alone. I paid every cent I owed to grief. If the folks at church want to whisper, let 'em whisper. I'm going dancing. And we did. I married Rose when I was 75. We bought an RV. We drove to the Grand Canyon. We went to New Orleans and listened to jazz. We ate beignets at 2 in the morning. I did more living in my 70s and 80s than I ever did in my 20s. Rose taught me that you are never too old to be a fool for love. She taught me that worrying about what other people think is a prison you build for yourself. Why should I let the woman down the street dictate my happiness? She doesn't pay my bills. She doesn't wake up in my skin. We had 21 years together before cancer took her. 21 years. People said, "Oh, it's so sad. He lost another one." No, it wasn't sad. It was a miracle. I got 2 great loves in one lifetime. Most people never even get one. I'm the luckiest man on earth. Now I'm alone again. Rose has been gone 5 years. My body moves slowly. My eyes aren't what they were. I can't drive the RV anymore. But I am happy, truly happy. Because here is the final secret, the one that took me a century to learn. Happiness is not a destination. It's a way of traveling. You young people treat happiness like it's a trophy waiting at the finish line. I'll be happy when I get the raise. I'll be happy when I get married. I'll be happy when I pay off the mortgage. Wrong. Dead wrong. If you can't find happiness making your morning coffee in your own kitchen, you won't find it on a yacht in the Mediterranean. You'll just be a miserable person with a better view. My joy these days comes from small things, the micro joys. The way the afternoon sun hits the dust in the air and turns it to gold. The taste of a cold peach in July. The sound of rain on the tin roof. The fact that my dog Buster here rests his head on my foot because he trusts me completely. A stranger holding the door open at the diner. These aren't small things. These are everything. These are the very substance of a life. If you aren't paying attention to them, you are sleepwalking through your own story. Every night before I close my eyes, I take an inventory. I make myself name 3 things that were good about the day. Maybe it was a decent sandwich. Maybe my team won the baseball game. Maybe my back didn't give me as much trouble. It trains the brain. Gratitude is a muscle. If you don't use it, it fades away. So here's my challenge to you. Stop waiting. Stop waiting for permission to be happy. Stop waiting for the perfect conditions, because the conditions will never be perfect. The economy will always have something wrong with it. There will always be conflict somewhere. There will always be heartbreak. Life is not a safe place. It is a dangerous, messy, and breathtaking business. I'm 101 years old. I'm in the overtime of the overtime. I know my time is short. And because I know it's short, every single minute has a flavor to it. You think you have forever. That's your real problem. You think you have time to hold on to grudges. You think you have time to worry about your pride. You think you have time to be miserable in a job you can't stand. You don't. Wake up. Look at the person next to you. Really look at them. Eat the food in front of you and actually taste it. Feel the wind on your face. I have lost everything a person can lose. I have buried my parents. Both my wives, my friends, and some of my children. That is the price you pay for living this long. But if you gave me the chance to do it all over again, to take on every bit of the pain, the grief, and the loss, just to have the love and the laughter one more time, I would do it without a second thought. I would pay that price again and again and again. Because life, even when it shatters your heart, is a gift. It is a miracle that any of us are here at all. So do me a favor. When you close this video, don't just move on to the next thing. Go outside, look up at the sky, say thank you. Then go make yourself a good cup of coffee. That's it. That's the whole secret. Now get off my porch. I've got a nap to take.